this individual who has been convicted of 34 felonies. Justice will not be achieved unless we are prepared to march and shout and fight for it. We each have the power to decide what kind of country we want to live in.
We have a couple videos to look at of Kamala Harris sounding off on Donald Trump in the Supreme Court, showing off her ability to articulate the Democratic message in a very precise and efficient manner. So let's check out a couple of these clips and then we'll jump in to provide the context wherever is needed.
Sadly, the press has not been covering it as much as they should in proportion to the seriousness of what just happened when the United States Supreme Court essentially told this individual who has been convicted of 34 felonies that he will be immune from essentially the activity he has told us he is prepared to engage in if he gets back into the White House. Understand what we all know. In 122 days, we each have the power to decide what kind of country we want to live in.
The media isn't covering it for a couple of reasons. First off, more publications and the largest media companies are all controlled by the right. Fox News dwarfs anything that's owned by the left, and even left-leaning stations you would presume, like CNN, a conservative billionaire owns the company that owns CNN. So the right are using their control of these publications, of major media, of independent media as well, in terms of like content creators, where they have Steven Crowder, The Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool. Studies have shown that YouTube's algorithm is more likely to recommend you right-leaning content. Rumble is right-wing owned. Twitch is dominated by right-wingers. And this is how most people, especially younger people, are gaining their information. Twitter as well. Twitter is right-dominated. And they are using this unfair advantage they will always have to paint the narrative in the way that they want. And second, to the extent that the left does have media outlets, they are owned by elites, people with money interests, not left-leaning interests. For instance, MSNBC is owned by a billionaire who donates just as much to Republicans as he does Democrats. So these left-leaning outlets just use that to try to draw in a certain type of audience capture that they can profit off of. However, what they will always do, what Trump's left-leaning interest for them, is what will get them the clicks, what will get them the money, and what will get them the views. And since the right, who controls and dominates the media space, has painted the narrative of Biden's mental inability, that's what's getting the views for them. So that's what they're covering over this horrendous Supreme Court ruling that anyone with actual left-leaning interests would be covering.
When there has been a full-on intentional attack against hard-fought, hard-won freedoms and rights. When I talk about the family that raised me, yes, they took me in a stroller as they were marching and shouting for justice, knowing that justice will not be achieved unless we are prepared to march and shout and fight for it. And one of the ways we do that is through our vote.
And she's exactly right here. We do have the choice of what kind of America we want to live in, and we shouldn't let the right's narrative about Biden dissuade us from making that choice. The best way to use your voice in this society is to vote, and if we don't vote, we don't win. And if we don't win, rights begin to get stripped away. Rights for African American, for women, for the LGBTQ community. We already see women's reproductive rights coming under fire. We see DEI and affirmative action coming under fire. We've seen same-sex rights go under fire since they gained them, since they hard fought for them. And these were rights that we achieved through using our voice, standing up and fighting for what's right. And I'll be damned if I let a bad debate performance make me just hand those away to a fascist.
This is probably the most significant election of our lifetime. You know, we have said it every 4 years, but this here one is it. We are looking at an election that will take place in 122 days.
122.
Where on one side, you have the former president who is running to become president again, who has openly talked about his admiration of dictators and his intention to be a dictator on day one, who has openly talked about his intention to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies, who has talked about being proud of taking from the women of America a most fundamental right to make decisions about your own body.
We always have a link to register to vote in the description of our videos. We need to have large voter turnout. When we show up, when voters show up in large numbers, conservatives lose. This is why they want to take every measure they can to limit how many people are voting. They hate mail-in ballots. They're fine with soldiers doing it. They're fine with the army doing it because, they typically vote their way, but they hated mail-in ballots in 2020 because it allowed more people to vote. Even though the majority, over 90% of them, were confirmed with ID, they want one-day voting only because that will cut off lots of people from voting. Early voting favors the left. When we show up, we win, and they know it. That's why they want to cut that off. We have a felon, a rapist on the ballot running to literally be a dictator, running to implement Project 2025 and to turn the government into a business that works for him and not for us. Running to do more of what he did in our first term, send us further into debt, benefit billionaires and the elite class, take from social programs in order to be able to do it. And it's our duty as citizens, as Americans, to never let that happen. If you enjoyed this video, we're Social Society. We're a commentary channel influenced by politics, society, and the economy. We are pretty left-leaning on this channel, but we're open to our right-wingers as well. The biggest thing here is having conversations that get everyone to the bottom of the truth. If that sounds like something that could interest you, consider smashing that subscribe button, leaving us a like, or even commenting on this video. We even have memberships available as low as $3 if you'd like to support, because the only way we become a society is together.